This is Dr. Dan McClellan. He's a Bible scholar. He has a bachelor's degree from Brigham Young, a master's from Oxford, another one from Trinity Western, and a PhD from Exeter in the UK. And this is Bubba the Sock. Hi.
According to the Bible, the Earth is only around 6,000 years old. Is there any evidence to support that?
Indeed there is.
All right, let's see it.
The population of the world today is about 8 billion people. Do you know if you start with 6 people, Shem, Ham and Japheth, Noah's 3 sons and their 3 wives, and let that population grow at the rate of about 0.5%, which is very conservative, for 4,500 years, that's how long ago the flood was, we get 8 billion. So the Bible's record of history is exactly consistent with the population of the world.
No, it's not, because the world population has grown at a rate of about 0.04%. from around 10,000 BCE to around 1700 CE, at which point it started to increase, and it topped out in 1964 at 2.24%.
Did you all catch that? The original creator was giving an average growth rate over one period of time. Dan divided it into 2 periods of time and gave 2 separate growth rates. Well, of course they're going to look different. You broke the average apart. Let me show you how this works on a graph. Here we see 4 points of data stretched out over 4 years, and it's charted below. Each year the amount is 4. At the end of 4 years, the total is 16, but the average per year is 4. Here we see a different set of data over a same 4-year period. The first 3 years, the amount per year is 2, but the last year the amount is 10. However, it has the exact same total as the prior chart, 16, and it has the exact same average as the prior chart, 4 per year. So what's different? Well, nothing in terms of averages, but you can make it look like it's different because the totals per year are a little bit different. You could divide that chart into 2 different periods of time, years 1 through 3 and years 4. Now, years 1 through 3 have an average of 2, but year 4 has an average of 10. So by dividing it into 2 periods of time, it makes it look like the average over time is different from the prior chart. But that's only because you divided the average into 2 periods of time. The overall average is still the same. It's 4. So what was the original creator's point? Was his point that for the last 4,500 years, the average growth rate has consistently been 0.5% each year? No. His point is that if you start with 6 people 4,500 years ago, and you average that one time period out to be about 0.5%, you can arrive at about 8 billion people or so today. He's not trying to say that that is a flat growth rate. You can have an exponential curve. You can have very low growth rate at the beginning and high growth rate at the end. Everybody knows about the Industrial Revolution and that population has ballooned in the last few centuries. That's not the argument he was making. But Dan is making it look like that's the argument he was making. And as we see, he's going to continue with this line of reasoning in his next chart that he presents. So in the next part of this video, we're going to see Dan basically rattling off a bunch of information that doesn't really address the point at all. But it does accomplish a very important purpose. It makes him sound smart, like he's the expert. So at the end, when he emphasizes his final point that really has nothing to do with what he just presented, it'll make it sound like it's authoritative.
So here you can see the world population in green. You see it taking off after the middle of the 20th century. That is the introduction of vaccines. That is the infant mortality rate plummeting. You can see the annual growth rate of the world population in the pink line, and that spikes in this chart in 1962/63, and then it drops off. The world population growth is actually on the decline. You can see the light green on the right side of this chart. That's projection into the future. Many scholars think that the population of the Earth will actually spike in about 60 years and then begin to decline. Not just the population growth, but the actual population itself, somewhere around 11 billion people. So no, The biblical notion of the history of the world is not even remotely consistent, much less exactly consistent with the population of the world. It does not fit at all because there are no data that support the notion that the earth is only 6,000 years old.
So the biblical timeline of 6,000 years doesn't fit with the data because the data doesn't fit with the biblical timeline of 6,000 years. Got it. That, folks, is what you call a circular argument.
We find soft tissue in dinosaur bones, showing that they cannot be millions of years old.
Now, here's the beginning of the article from a 2005 issue of Science announcing that soft tissue was discovered in the hind limb of a Tyrannosaurus rex. Here's how a scientist approaches these new data rather than an ideologue, about halfway down after the parenthetical 3.
Now get ready, because he's about to present a bunch more information that he knows most of his audience is not going to understand. Because the goal is not to actually make his case to you and explain to you his argument. His goal is to confuse you and just accept him as the expert.
These data indicate that exceptional morphological preservation in some dinosaurian specimens may extend to the cellular level or beyond. If so, in addition to providing independent means of testing phylogenetic hypotheses about dinosaurs, applying molecular and analytical methods to well-preserved dinosaur specimens has important implications for elucidating preservational microenvironments and will contribute to our understanding of biogeochemical interactions at the microscopic and molecular levels that lead to fossilization.
Now, for most of you, all of that was just gobbledygook. It made no sense. Some of you might have understood it, but most of you did not. But don't worry, we're going to go through it a little bit.
These data indicate that...
Now let's stop there for a second. These data indicate. Data doesn't really indicate anything. People do. People have to interpret the data. People connect the dots. So really, the data is being cranked through somebody's interpretive lens, somebody's dogmas, methodologies, and biases. At the end of the day, it's really their dogma that's dictating what the data indicates. But let's continue.
That exceptional morphological preservation in some dinosaurian specimens may extend to the cellular level or beyond.
So basically, this is just a fancy way of saying, hey everybody, remember how we used to say that soft tissue couldn't last 10,000 years, let alone millions of years, during the fossilization of dinosaur bones? Well, guess what? We found some soft tissue. So there must be some way that we don't know about that this stuff can be preserved for millions of years. We should check into it.
If so, in addition to providing independent means of testing phylogenetic hypotheses about dinosaurs,
independent means of testing phylogenetic hypotheses. Well, phylogenetics deals with the evolutionary aspect of how species develop, as we can see here. Basically what they're saying is that now that we got some soft tissue, we have new ways to test to see how evolution occurs. But evolution is already presupposed before they even look at the soft tissue. Everything is being cranked through this worldview.
applying molecular and analytical methods to well-preserved dinosaur specimens has...
And those methods that are going to be applied, do you think they have any room on the table for a creationist worldview? Or do you think all those methods are going to be done under the presupposition that evolution is the main process?
Important implications for elucidating preservational microenvironments and will contribute to our understanding of biogeochemical interactions at the microscopic and molecular levels that lead to fossilization.
So that's just a fancy way of saying, hey, this has important implications that'll allow us to understand how fossils can form while still preserving soft tissue that can be kept preserved for millions of years after the fact. Now, in the next part, he's going to explain a theory, and it's just a theory, that they come up with to explain how this soft tissue could be preserved. It took them 8 years to come up with this theory, but keep in mind, there's a simple rule that governs how they do this. They have to believe that evolution is true, that the soft tissue is somehow being preserved for millions of years, and they just need to figure out how.